Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me. As always, our 8-part mini podcast series continues tonight, recapping every single division for the 2024 NFL Draft. If you have missed the first 5 parts of this mini podcast series, we covered all 4 divisions in the NFC, and on the most recent episode, we turned our gears to the AFC and covered the AFC East. Up tonight is the AFC North, so we will be talking about the Baltimore Ravens. We will be talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns, and lastly, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll be sharing every single pick, talking through the full recap of what the team did on draft weekend, sharing my favorite picks, my value picks, my questionable picks or decisions, and then I will rank all 4 teams in the AFC North in terms of my overall favorite draft classes from their division in the 2024 NFL Draft. These podcasts usually go anywhere from about 18 to 22 minutes and really go in depth in terms of what I thought each team did in the 2024 NFL Draft. So let's jump right into it and start with the Baltimore Ravens. Towards the latter part of round 1, pick 30 overall, they selected Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins. In the second round, at pick 62 overall, they took Washington offensive tackle Roger Rosengarten. In the third round, at pick 93, they took Penn State edge Adisa Isaac. In the fourth round, at 113, they took North Carolina wide receiver Devontae Walker. In the fourth round, at 130, they took Iowa State cornerback TJ Tampa. In the fifth round, they took at 165 Marshall running back Rasheen Ali. In the sixth round, at 218, they took Kentucky quarterback Devin Leary. In the seventh round, they took at 228 Michigan State center Nick Samak. And in the seventh round, at 250 overall, they took Purdue safety Sanasi Kane. Overall, I really like what the Baltimore Ravens did. One of the best draft classes, as usual, in the entire NFL. You know, my favorite picks, it's hard to really narrow it down. I love the Nate Wiggins pick, a potential shutdown corner late in round 1. Only reason he fell down there was due to concerns about his frame. But I think the way his cover ability is, he can mitigate the concerns about the frame. I think they got themselves a potential shutdown corner. So I love the pick. TJ Tampa, he's also my top value pick for them as well. This is a guy that most people thought was going to go somewhere either in round 2 or round 3, falls all the way to the latter part, almost one of the last picks in round 4. This is a guy who I think could easily develop into a starting corner at the next level. So TJ Tampa, great pick, great value pick. They stole him in round 4. I love the Rasheen Ali pick. He was one of my day 3 backs that I was really intrigued with. If he doesn't get hurt at the Senior Bowl, I think he kind of rides the pre-draft process and maybe goes higher than this. He's got 3 down upside. He's a great receiver, one of the best receiving backs in this draft class. I think he could be a perfect complement to Derrick Henry. I think he's going to supersede Keenan Mitchell potentially in that backfield sooner rather than later because he adds more versatility than a guy like Keenan Mitchell. But even if it's just Henry, Ali, and Mitchell, I think they add a lot of explosiveness and big playability there behind Derrick Henry. And then also, he's on my value pick, but also one of my favorite picks also is Devontae Walker. It wasn't that long ago Devontae Walker was in people's late round 1 mock drafts. He was in Daniel Jeremiah's top 30 or top 50 big board, the first one in the 30s. This is a guy that's got a lot of upside. He's got a lot of Christian Watson to his game. There's a lot to like about him. Is there route running development and refinement needed? Yes. He had a couple of drops at the Senior Bowl that people really seemed to harp on. This was not a guy that had drop concerns when he was at North Carolina or before that when he was at a smaller school. So I think he's a big playability. I think he could become an eventual starter opposite Zay Flowers in that offense with Mark Andrews in the slot. I think I love the pick of Des Walker. To me, he's got as much upside as other guys that were taken ahead of him. Just more refinement needed, but I think where they got him was a steal. So, you know, I liked him more than Javon Baker. I liked him more than Jermaine Burton, and he went later than both of those guys. Questionable pick. It was hard to really find anything that I really questioned here. because I do like what they did. Where I landed on was I wasn't really a Devin Leary guy. To me, big arm and nothing really else about him. I would have rather them, take a guy who I thought maybe suited their play style a little bit more, just in case maybe Lamar Jackson went down. They've had guys that, can step in and they don't have to change the offense significantly. A guy like Devin Leary would come in, you'd have to change the offense pretty significantly because he doesn't bring, that level of athleticism or even close to it that a guy, like Lamar Jackson can. But again, this is nitpicking. For a 6th round pick, he was fine value too. Most people thought he was probably going to get drafted somewhere on day 3. I would have said, he's borderline draftable, but I know a lot of people thought he was going to go somewhere in day 3. If we take this to the Cincinnati Bengals, in the 1st round of pick 18, they take Georgia offensive tackle Amarius Mims. In the 2nd round at pick 49, they took Michigan defensive tackle Chris Jenkins. In the 3rd round at pick 80, they took Alabama wide receiver Jermaine Burton. In the 3rd round at pick 97, they took Texas A&M defensive tackle McKinley Jackson. In the 4th round at pick 115, they took Iowa tight end Eric All. In the 5th round at pick 149, they took TCU cornerback Josh Newton. In the 6th round at pick 194, they took Arizona tight end Tanner McLaughlin. In the 6th round, they took Ole Miss edge Cedric Johnson. In the 7th round, 224, they took Ole Miss safety Dejon Anthony. In the 7th round, 237, they took Miami of Florida center Matt Lee. Favorite picks here, I would lean on Amarius Mims, Jermaine Burton, and Eric All were my favorite picks for them. Amarius Mims, listen, he didn't play a lot, but his raw tools and his ceiling might be higher than any offensive tackle in this entire draft class. If he puts it all together and he was a 3-year starter, you're talking about a guy who probably would have been a lock top 10 pick in this draft class. So he steps in there and he's got the upside to play like a top 5, top 8, offensive lineman selected because his raw tools are as good as anybody in this draft class. I really like the Chris Jenkins pick. I could have added this to the mix too. At pick 49, I thought appropriate value, but also a guy who steps right in, offers a lot on that defensive line, great college production, good athleticism, lot to like about Chris Jenkins. And then Jermaine Burton and Eric All, I think, are really interesting. They don't have a long-term tight end there. They've been shuffling through guys. I think if Eric All was fully healthy, he's a top 100 pick. He's a guy who could legitimately attack the seam. He can block. He can hold up at the point of attack. They might have found themselves a real gem in the 4th round there in terms of Eric Hall. And then Jermaine Burton, listen, I didn't think he was going to go round 3. I thought his off the field and his character and personality stuff that people question were going to make him slide to round 4 or even round 5. But where they took him is if you take the off the field stuff out of it and just talk about Jermaine Burton, the football player, he can win vertically. He can create separation. He's got route running chops. He's got ball skills. He's got body control. There's a lot to like about Jermaine Burton's game. I don't think he's really a slot guy. So I think this year he's going to be mixed in a little bit this year. But I think if T. Higgins was to move on, and most people expect it, I think Jermaine Burton's got a real shot to become an outside starting receiver next year for the Bengals. In terms of value picks, there's a couple guys on day 3, and I'll kind of run through them. Their 5th and their 2 6th-round picks. Josh Newton, if he would have went late round 3, early round 4, I don't think anybody would have been surprised. I think he's got a real shot to develop into the 3rd or 4th corner for the Bengals. So that was a good value pick. Tanner McLaughlin, Darren Jeremiah had him in his top 60. So this is a guy that, has an interesting pass catching background. So they kind of double dip there at the tight end position. If for some reason Eric All, the injuries kind of hamper him and he never gets back to the player who I think he could be, I think Tanner McLaughlin is a very interesting player. I think there's room on the depth chart for both of them to find their way to important roles on this team. And then also Cedric Johnson out of Ole Miss, if he would have went early round 4 or round 5, I don't think people would have been surprised. For him to go close to round 7, I think was a good value there. My one questionable decision is I thought the end of the 3rd round was a little early for what McKinley Jackson brought to the table, but there wasn't a lot of true two-gapping, run stuffing, nose tackles in this draft class. So I think that's what pushed him up the board a little bit, but I thought it was a little bit early in my eyes. If we take this to the Cleveland Browns, obviously still limited in picks. They traded one, to get Jerry Jeudy there. They still didn't have a 1st rounder due to the Deshaun Watson trade. So they came in a little hampered already. But in the 2nd round, pick 54 overall, they took Ohio State defensive tackle Michael Hall. In the 3rd round, at pick 85, they took Michigan offensive guard Zach Zinter. In the 5th round at 156, they took Louisville wide receiver Jamari Brash. In the 6th round at 206, they took Mississippi State linebacker Nathaniel Watson. And then the 7th round, they had a pair of picks. They took South Dakota cornerback Miles Harden. And at 243, late in the draft, they took Cincinnati defensive tackle Jaywan Briggs. In terms of my favorite picks, listen, Michael Hall and Zach Zinter, I thought those were guys. I think those are guys that could develop into starters. I really liked the Michael Hall pick. So he was definitely my favorite pick. He was a guy I was interested in the Giants looking at in somewhere on day 2 as that penetrating three-tack. I think Michael Hall could be a really impactful player. Teams are craving interior pass rushers, and Michael Hall brings that to the table. Zach Zinter, if he doesn't go down in injury, I think he's locked and loaded somewhere on day 2. A lot of people did think he was going to fall to day 3 because of that, but I think where they got him in pick 85 was appropriate. They looked at him as a guy that could become a starter down the line for them and probably would have been drafted higher than that had it not been an injury. So those are my 2 favorite picks. In terms of some value picks, I thought 7th rounder Miles Harden was going to go maybe in the 5th round. So I thought maybe 2 rounds of value there from the South Dakota quarterback that has a lot of skill. And then Jamari Thrash at pick 156, if he would have went around earlier, he reminds me a lot of a Darnell Mooney type. So I thought in the 4th round might have been where a guy with his speed and explosiveness came off the board. So they got him around later in the 5th round. So I thought that was decent value. In terms of questionable picks, listen, I put Jaywan Briggs, the 7th rounder, in there. But I guess the one thing, if you do want to question it, I personally like the move. I could see somebody saying Zach Zinter in the 3rd round was a little early. It's got some injury concerns. Most people thought he was going to fall to round 4, but that's a little nitpicky. Obviously, could have went the bigger picture of Deshaun Watson, but that wasn't now. So I didn't really feel like that was something to question, with this draft class. So I would say there was guys I liked. I thought Briggs was an undrafted free agent, but it's round 7 at that point. A lot of guys being drafted are UDFA types. So you could have made the case that maybe they could have went a different direction instead of Zach Zinter in the 3rd round, maybe been a little bit more aggressive and move up and try to get somebody like a Cooper Beebe or somebody like that, not coming off a significant injury. But I do like Zinter, the player, and do think he could emerge there to be a starter down the line. And then wrapping up the AFC North is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really liked what they did in this draft class. They started it at pick 20 overall. In the 1st round, they took Washington offensive lineman Troy Fautanu. In the 2nd round, at pick 51 overall, they took West Virginia interior offensive lineman Zach Frazier. In the 3rd round, at pick 84 overall, they took Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson. In the end of the 3rd round, at pick 98 overall, they took NC State linebacker Peyton Willis. In the 4th round, at 119, they took South Dakota State offensive guard Mason McCormick. In the 6th round, they had a pair of picks. They took Iowa defensive tackle Logan Lee. And at pick 195, they took Texas cornerback Ryan Watts. Overall, I thought the Steelers had a great draft. It's not a sexy draft because 3 of their first 5 picks were offensive linemen, but I thought they had a fantastic draft. Troy Fautanu falling to pick 20 was not only my favorite pick, but also tremendous value. If he would have went where the Jets were originally picking at 10 or somewhere in the top 15, wouldn't have been surprised. I think people love the versatility he brings, the athleticism, the ability to play in a gap or a zone scheme. Brings a lot to the table. So he was my favorite pick and one of my number 1 value picks for them. I love the Roman Wilson pick. They traded Deontay Johnson this offseason. I think Roman Wilson can come in and offer a lot of what Deontay Johnson did. He's a guy, and I think he's got more speed or explosiveness than Deontay Johnson. He can get vertical, but he's got great route running chops. If he would have played somewhere else and been more of a focal point of that team and not at Michigan where they ran the ball so much, I think Roman Wilson could have put up crazy stats and been a much earlier pick. I thought after his great Senior Bowl and Combine, he would have not lasted anywhere near pick 84. I thought he was going to be a lock to go round 2. So it was not only a great value pick and one of my favorite picks, all kind of merging together there. But my favorite value pick, if we really want to hone in on one, was Peyton Willis, the NC State linebacker. Listen, there are injury concerns. The word is he doesn't have his ACLs, that maybe he's a 1 contract player, but regardless, he was one of the best linebackers in this class. His tape is top 50 worthy. The injury thing pushed him down the board, but to go all the way to 98, I think is a tremendous value pick. I think he's a plug and play guy who could be an impact on that defense. So you look at their first 4 picks and, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Willis. I think all 4 of those guys can be starters. And then Mason McCormick in the 4th round is a guy that some people thought was going to sneak in, obviously coming from South Dakota State. Might not step right into a big role, but I think he's got starter upside. I think in a year or two, if he becomes a starter, would not surprise me. So I think Zach Frazier will be an immediate starter for them this year. Obviously, Troy Fautanu in the first round will be an immediate starter. And I also think Mason McCormick has a chance down the line. They could potentially get, I think, 2 definite starters along the O-line to fortify it, and maybe even 3 down the line. You add in Roman Wilson and Peyton Wilson. We're talking about 5 impactful players, 4 guys I think who will start maybe this year, and then McCormick, who could become a versatile depth offensive lineman with potential to maybe start down the line. Questionable decisions, I didn't really see any. If you really want to nitpick, I thought Logan Lee was going to go undrafted, but I do think he kind of profiles what they're looking for in their set the edge type power defensive end. I think Logan Lee could play that role. I didn't think he was going to get drafted, so maybe a slight gripe there, but that's really nitpicking on him and Ryan Watts at the end of this draft. Overall, I thought the AFC North had a really strong draft showing. My rankings for them was the Pittsburgh Steelers number 1. Baltimore Ravens literally could have been a 1A, 1B thing, so I put the Baltimore Ravens at number 2. I liked what they did. I think the attacking of the O-line aggressively and some of the value Pittsburgh got maybe slightly superseded what Baltimore did, but both of those teams, if I was making an overall rankings, both Pittsburgh and Baltimore probably would be in my top 8 favorite draft classes out of 32 for the entire league. So I thought both of them did a great job. I put the Bengals at number 3. I like some of the pieces they got. They took a swing though, right? Amarius Mims is a little bit of a project. We'll see how that works out, but his ceiling is unbelievable. Eric All, a little bit of a project. We'll see how the injury is. Jermaine Burton, pretty significant project there, right? With the character stuff. But if some of these guys hit, we're talking about really outperforming their draft slots a lot. And then the Cleveland Browns rounded out for number 4 for me. I like some of the picks they did. I talked about Michael Hall, and I like that. But, they had a little bit less draft capital than other teams, not a lot of impactful players, maybe 2 guys that could come in and develop into starters, and then we'll see. So they rounded out there, but they were working with less ammunition. But I love the Steelers and Ravens. I like the Bengals, and I thought the Browns did solid with the picks they had. So there it is, guys. My thoughts on every team in the AFC North, sharing my thoughts, favorite picks, value picks, questionable picks, full recap of the draft, what I thought about it, ranking them 1 through 4 favorite drafts in the AFC North. If you're enjoying this content, go back and listen to the recent podcast. So many podcasts since the NFL draft, sharing all my thoughts from draft weekend, dynasty rookie rankings, and now the 8-part mini-series recapping division by division in great detail every single team's NFL draft. If you get over to the website, S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out our premium content tab, and for $9.99, you get all our premium notebooks. The rankings notebook is the bread and butter one right now. Dynasty rookie rankings updated constantly. IDP rookie rankings once the 8-part miniseries is over. A guest from the industry soon to talk about those rankings as well. It'll have positional dynasty rankings overall updated later this month or early in June as well. The scouting notebook has almost 100 detailed player profiles, full scouting reports on so many of these offensive skill players. And then the draft projections notebook, even though the draft is concluded, has thoughts on almost 400 players, offense and defense, snapshot of how they win, developmental areas, all their combine measurements as well. It's the best way to support the show, help us to continue to do what we're doing here. So we hope you greatly consider purchasing it. For $9.99, you get access to all of the notebooks. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.